Well, hello, everyone. We are back in the new year, and we're going to have another episode of the Chairs Chat. I am the Lee County Republican Executive Committee Chairwoman, Mercedes Price Harry, and today I have an old and dear friend of mine from way back in the Tea Party days, Mr. Matt Hurley. So I want to introduce you to Matt Hurley. So Matt, let's start by, I always like to start in I have three parts here. So the first part, I want to hear about you. I want to hear about you growing up, what Matt Hurley went through growing up, where you grew up, before you got into politics. Give us a little bit about, you're an only child, right?
I have siblings. Siblings.
Okay.
Yep.
All
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Why did I think you were an only child?
I don't know. Have siblings, and but yeah, have lived a much different lifestyle than my siblings, and it's been.
Why is that?
Just different life choices, went in different directions, and decided to do different things. So I grew up, I was born and raised here, and raised in Fort Myers, which is, very uncommon, obviously.
Yes.
And so, stumbled in, I grew up in a agnostic, independent household. Certainly, politics wasn't really talked about in my house, and certainly not, my parents weren't primary voters, and, for either side, not totally politically engaged really at all. And, and so it was weird to sort of end up in the political arena, but stumbled into it by accident, just, started really listening to the news and the kind of the political market space as a teenager, and, got involved as, sort of the rise of the Tea Party movement, and that's when we met. It's not. There's so many people come in and out of our area. We're a very transient, part of the country. There's not a lot of people that have been in politics consistently here for 15 years, and you're definitely one of those people. And so it's awesome.
Too, man. Look at us now.
Exactly. I was thinking that when we were chatting before we started, like, if someone would have shown me in 2009 or 2010, and said, Mercedes would eventually be the chair of the Republican Party, I'd say, I'm not sure that people like her and I are allowed into Republican meetings, much less be allowed to run the party. So
yeah, right. But it just goes to show, though, that if you stick it out, and, because this is the thing I try to explain to people, it's a long game, right? It is a long game. We didn't get here overnight. We're talking about generational infrastructure politically, and most certainly, at the government level. So it's going to take some time. And so you just keep chipping away. And if you really, truly believe in the mission, then I feel like people see that in you. And if you don't run around burning bridges, and, one of the things I've always stressed is respectful collaboration. I don't have to like you. But we should have a mutual respect for our elected officials. It's hard to serve. It's very hard to serve. I can't even imagine being like an actual elected official and having to, put up with some of the stuff. A recent conversation I had with a chair, she said to me, why would anyone run for office when you treat me like this? And I thought to myself, that's such a good point. Like the way people, treat each other, and particularly the chair, a volunteer position, let alone an elected official, they get it 10 times worse. I learned that at my job too. And I think that sort of helped change my mindset. Anyway, listen, I'm getting off the subject. Here's my point. So you have siblings. Were your parents conservative? They weren't political, but were they conservative?
I wouldn't say generally, no. I mean, again, we didn't grow up going to church, outside of, history class in middle school. I wasn't, no one was talking to me about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or anything like that. My parents are great people, but they were working 40 plus hours a week, at went through the recession, like many people in this area. They were
2006, 7, 8, 9.
Totally. Yeah. My parents had, both been in various aspects of the construction industry. So that was certainly, very, very hard hit here. And again, we weren't a family of means or anything like that even before that. So, I grew up pretty poor, and just really, initially wanted to get into the marketing and advertising business just to make money. I wanted to support myself, wanted to be an entrepreneur, and obviously, gathered this interest in politics over time, and eventually was like, man, a lot of the young people are working for the left. Like, I'm going to go, work for the right. And I think that there's been this really a major trend shift, largely, in my opinion, due to the great work of Donald Trump over the last, decade and a half of making Republicans the cool party.
Yeah.
You know, when we got into this, right, Republicans were not cool people.
No.
You know, the Democrats were, flaunting, Barack Obama on the cover of GQ. They were the really cool party. We were the party of old white people. We were not very diverse, not very exciting. And so, it's been cool to get to be a part of that shift of just trying to bring younger people into the party, bring more diverse people into the party, because really we are the party of freedom. We are the party of
liberty. Yes.
Yeah. All the great
Truly
things.
The party of tolerance.
Yeah. To jump back to one of the things you said, like, that I think is so true, and I talk to people about it all the time, is, in politics, the only thing you can really do is wake up every day and do the right thing and do things right. And you might lose a lot of days, right? You're not going to win. You're sort of not winning every argument. You're not winning every battle. But if you extrapolate that out over the course of, a
15 years,
a term, certainly, a decade.
Yeah.
What you see is that, the cream does rise to the top, right?
Yes.
The people who consistently do the right thing and do things right and are just consistent in who they are politically, those are the people that rise to the top. And you see that even from a political messaging standpoint, you see that on the left and the right. You see people like Donald Trump that are very, very successful. You don't like everything that he says, but he's very consistent in what he says. And so you never have to wonder, like, wow, where's he going with this, right?
Yeah.
And the same is true on the left with people like Bernie Sanders, Zoran Mondani. They come in and again, you may not like what their proposals are, but you don't, worry about them like, I wonder what he really meant when he said that. Like they say what they mean and they mean what they say.
Right.
And so sort of gone are the days of these like wishy-washy, politicians where you can just kind of, stick your finger out into the wind and see which way it's blowing and govern from that standpoint. That doesn't really work anymore.
Right.
And so
that's true.
So
what was the catalyst for you? Because, I always, every time we talk, I always think of being at the, I don't even remember what the bar was called at the time, but we were at a Young Republican event. Ballyornies.
Yeah.
Nice. That's exactly right. And you came tearing in there, and you were like maybe 15 at the time. And I was with Young Republicans. And I remember we were maybe doing a debate of some sort, and you would hang out with us all the time. And so talk to me about, because I was always so impressed with you, because, again, we're, I'll be 50 next year. How old are you? 31? 30, right. Yep. So there's a significant age difference between us, but we always had that one thing in common where we both loved Republican and leaned a little libertarian, sure. Right? Or maybe leaned a lot libertarian, at least back then, or maybe even now more. But nonetheless, what was it for you? Like, what was that thing that happened where you were like, I need to get involved?
Yeah. So I always thought I would, like, my dream as a young kid was to go produce like NBC nightly news. I wanted to be like an executive producer of the news. That was like as a young kid.
Is that why you always wore suits?
Well, I just tried. My grandmother told me, you dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
And you did. You were always like looking sharp.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm down to my quarter zips now, but back in the day, I did strive to dress nice. But yeah, and I think so through that process, like I went to an arts-based school, and I always was like studying communication arts, and I mean I was always striving to really do that. Like I wanted to go be the executive producer of the primetime news, and through that process, even so many years ago, I realized how much corruption there was in the news and in the media, and how the media is really just a
mouthpiece.
It's just a propaganda
corporate
piece for whatever the powers that be want. And I literally remember writing. We were writing and pitching headlines in school, and I wrote a headline that said, Republicans lead Democrats in fundraising, ahead of election day. Like that was the headline that I wrote. And I was told I couldn't say that. And I just thought,
really?
And I said, but it's like a numerical fact, right? Like it's just a numerically measurable fact.
Right.
And they said, well, it might influence the way people think. You can't write that. And I'm like, but it's just a fact. And I realized how even as like young journalists, like people studying to get into journalism at a young age, you were already being taught like how to be indoctrinating, towards the left. And, and so it was wild. I mean, we brought in so it literally after that, I was like, I want to bring like Republican leadership in here and talk to them. And so I remember, bringing Gary Lee to school.
Yeah,
was, like,
the old REC chair from like 15 plus 20 years ago. He was a congressman. He was a former congressman, like in the 70s, I think. Yeah,
congressman from New York. And so brought him in, and it was interesting. He actually then took me to meet then Speaker Rubio.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so Rubio was Speaker of the House. I mean, nobody really knew who Marco Rubio was. He was,
I remember.
Yeah, crazy guy running for, gonna make this long shot bid for
Senate.
U.S. Senate. Yeah, so it was crazy.
I co-ran his campaign with Ruth Rodriguez at the time.
What another like amazing woman. Blast from the past,
no kidding.
Involved a long time ago.
Very impactful. Yeah,
and still around. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead and interrupt.
No, yeah. So I mean, I think that's really how my catalyst of actually getting like politically, I guess informed,
is seeing bias and experiencing it.
Yeah, just
I think that's a lot of people
at the most basic level, right?
Sure.
And I remember too, like that was the Obama era. Like Sarah Palin was a big, and just the way they would always teach you, like, hey, you need to use like less flattering pictures of
right.
certain political figures, and try to portray them in a certain way, and
always portraying her as stupid.
Dumb,
you don't become the governor of a state because you're Tim Walz. I don't know. But that was always my argument. You're not a mother of five and the governor of a state because you're stupid, right?
And I think that a lot of people, if you really go back and you study the 2008 race. Right. The outsider movement was brewing, right? So Mitt Romney in 2008 was actually kind of the outsider, alternate to John McCain in the primaries. And, Mitt had a lot of success early on there. He was sort of running as this businessman that was going to, that was going to kind of shake things up, shake up Washington.
Sure.
And McCain was, the statesman and all this stuff. And so, that was a bitter primary. And, obviously McCain did ultimately, pull through because sort of establishment Republicans got behind him. But when they were headed into the general, some really people who went on to be good mentors of mine, were in their prime of political consulting at that time. And they realized they were like, we have got to find a way to inject energy and excitement into this race. Like this is going to be a popularity contest versus Barack Obama.
Yeah.
They had no money. I mean, after the primaries, McCain's campaign was, $2.5 million upside down in debt.
Yeah, well, it was so underwhelming.
Yep, and there was no excitement. And so if when they realized like we are not going to pick someone boring and safe and have any shot of even financially making it through this race, much less putting up a fight. And so she really achieved the goal for them. She drew out huge crowds.
Yeah, she did.
At that time, she helped tremendously with fundraising, both institutionally and small dollar fundraising, which of course now is the bread and butter of politics, but was, Barack Obama really was the first person to kind of
capitalize
that and energize it. So, I think a lot of people don't give her credit for, really maintaining and getting the energy, brought back in. I mean, obviously not a great election cycle for Republicans, but could have been much, much worse.
Yeah. Well, and then Romney coming after the fact. I remember when, I think it was either Romney or McCain. I remember watching the delegates vote for who they wanted to be the nominee. And I remember, I think it was Romney. And when he won, like half the room was like, And I thought, wow, that is not a good sign when, the people that are working in the whole political system and the ground level people aren't really happy about the nominee. That's kind of a problem.
Well, and I think one of the things you see that used to be Republicans' biggest problem that has now become our biggest, asset. For the longest time, Republicans were always a day late and a dollar short with whoever the next person's turn it was.
Yeah.
So McCain had been passed over for W in 2000, so they felt like they owed it to him in 2008. Romney had been passed over for McCain, so they gave it to him.
And now it's like, who's it going to be
today?
We have so many incredible people to choose from.
That's right, and then Democrats, to the contrary, are really operating more like how the Republicans used to.
Yeah,
right. They are,
Are you going to run Pete again? You gonna run Beto again?
Yeah, even worse. I mean, they go back to Hillary Clinton. They go to Biden, right? I mean, they basically they box Bernie out for Hillary. They box Bernie out again for Biden. Box everybody out. Klobuchar, Buttigieg, who again was a very exciting candidate in 2000, and then obviously with when they pulled the plug on Biden, both literally and figuratively, in 24. Again, they just boxed the process out. They said Harris is the nominee, and it's just they expect that to work. Like, how can you have someone who never won a primary state be the nominee for your party? It's not going to be successful,
right? And then question how you could have lost. Yeah, it's like it's obvious.
Yep.
So okay, so let's So you weren't homeschooled?
Nope, not
Why
homeschooled.
did I think you were homeschooled?
No,
maybe because you were.
Well,
Maybe that's why, because for a lot of us, you were and really are, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before, like a bit of a prodigy.
Depends on who you ask, but
yeah, I guess so. But to be your age and be so involved and invested and smart, the things that you knew, and then to go on and do some of the things that you've done. Let's move into that. So, all right. So you were in your teens, you started to get involved. Mm-hmm. You had all sorts of aspirations, wanting to do the news, and then kind of moving into politics and realizing that there was no youth in Republican politics, or at least there wasn't a real movement of youth. So talk to me about how you kind of got into where you are now.
Sure.
And then, let's finish it up with what you do without really naming it, because, we're going to catch hell for promoting your business, which is not the goal. I want to promote you. I love young Republicans, and I just love being able to share with people what we were saying earlier before I went on my soapbox, which is that if you get involved in politics and you stick it out, you really can move the needle. And you don't even have to do it in positions of leadership. I've actually learned I feel more influential on the back end than I do now, because now I just feel like all I'm doing is like playing defense, right? Yep. I can't even recover from the punches to my face. So talk to me about how how it evolved.
Yeah, I took, started out in the advertising side of the business, which, eventually gets you into, doing, sort of the basic advertising things we know in politics, TV, mail, radio, digital, all that fun stuff. And then eventually, became a full-time general consultant. So we run these large-scale, campaigns. And
who were you consulting for, and at what age?
So I got my start here locally. The name everybody kind of knows. I got my start. The first person that really took a chance on me and gave me any responsibility was Trey Radel.
That's right.
Yeah, so
That's right. You set up. Okay, never mind. No, you set up Clausen and me to meet. That's right.
Yeah, so Trey obviously was really the first person that kind of gave me a shot, saw any sort of like real monetary value in me, and so worked with him. Obviously, he had his issues, his fall from grace. And,
but he's a great guy, and he was a great congressman. I remember after everything went down, I was on all over Twitter at the time. Before they banned me. And I was like defending him left and right because he was a great congressman.
Way ahead of his time, for
sure.
Like
for sure. An amazing communicator.
Yep.
Just great. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Way ahead of his time. And so obviously after he after he had his issues and left Congress, then that obviously opened up the special election. And so, I worked with Kurt Clausen, who was, completely unknown.
And how'd you get involved with Kurt? Because he wasn't unknown. He just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, Kurt reached out to me after I was still working with Radel when Radel was having his issues. I was doing a lot of TV hits sort of in defense of Trey and talking about his issues. And so Clausen and a couple of his folks reached out to me and like, hey, kid, I see you on TV defending that guy every night. You're doing a pretty good job at it. We'd love if you'd, come work with us. And I said, well, that's very nice. I appreciate it. But, I said, I'm loyal to the congressman, I'm going to be with him. And obviously, Trey ended up leaving Congress, not running. And so, once that happened, then I went over and joined Team Clausen. And the thing that I love to tell everybody about that is, our first poll in that race, of course, was him and Lizbeth Benaquisto, right. Paige Kriegel, and some others. But the first poll in that race had Lizbeth at 47% and had Clausen at 3%. And I tell everybody that we had a 3.5% margin of error on the poll, so we started at negative 0.5%.
Right.
The polls,
yeah. Right.
To her 50.5 is how I tell it.
Yeah. Well, listen, she was very popular. At the time.
Yep, and that was a major upstate. That was a of course very short runway special election, and so we won that by 24 points on election day.
Yeah, you guys did. You killed it.
Yeah, it was really exciting.
Let me backtrack real quick. What was your title with Radel?
So with Radel, was people kind of forget about that 2011, 2012 cycle was, again, that was on kind of the tail end of the recession there. So there was just no money in politics. Now we see these campaigns that are run with these massive budgets.
Yeah.
I mean, Radel, between the primary and the general, was I think spent maybe $500,000. I mean,
really?
Yeah. I mean, the highest paid staffer on Radel's campaign in 2011, 2012, was making less than what my interns make now on a campaign.
So you were never official.
I wasn't on the official side. I didn't
You
go
were
to.
always
I
on the
was
unofficial.
Yeah, I was a teenager, so I couldn't even go to work for the federal government when he became a congressman.
That makes sense.
So yeah, so
Okay.
I was just a consultant for the campaign. I mean, we had a 5-person team. That was a heavyweight race, right? We were running against Chauncey Goss,
Yeah.
the son of the former head of the CIA.
Yeah,
I mean,
Chauncey's a great guy too.
yeah, Chauncey, another great guy. I got to know him really a lot better.
Now the chairman of the Southwest Florida Water Management Department.
Yeah, in a great spot for him too. Like, really, those are issues he cares a lot about.
Yeah, totally. As a Sanibel kid, for sure. That's like right up his alley.
Yeah.
But okay, so sorry. So Clausen. So what do you think was like? What do you think? How do you go from negative 0.5% to winning by 24 points? What do you think that it was?
That's obviously when the 2012, 2014 cycle is really when the outsider movement hit its fever pitch, right? So this is right pre-Trump, right? Trump 2016.
Vote the bums out.
Yeah, and just these guys of just being the outsiders, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a politician. Since the beginning of time, since the Mayflower, right? It's like, in order to be a politician, you had to have some lineage. You had to
have a wife and 2.2 kids and a dog. And
city council, county commission, state rep, state senate,
right.
Congress.
You climbed the ladder.
Yeah. And, the outsider movement just came in and, shattered that, right? Where it was just, what I love about politics, and I talk about this all the time, is that it's the only place where, like, really free markets totally dictate things, where there's
you think in politics?
Definitely, because here's what happens is you have so if I'm a marketing advertising guy and you own a car dealership, I can come to you and I can say, well, keep buying this advertising product and next month your sales are going to go up, next month, and I can always keep BSing you to some inevitable end, right?
Sure.
Until you just quit. Like, election day comes, all the cards get flipped over, and what people think really is laid out there. So I think what happens is, like, the polling just indicated this, right? If you look back, it's really the 2010, 12, 14, those were like the kind of fever pitch cycles where if you just asked the electorate, there's 2 people running for office, okay? And I'm going to give you a little bit about both of them. One of them has a great record of accomplishing things for you in government, right? They've been a leader on the city council, whatever. This other guy has never held elected office. He has no government experience whatsoever. In fact, he maybe only voted in a couple of elections himself. But he's been a really successful business person. He's never taken $1 of government money, and he's been, he's created tons of jobs, right? If you just create that profile and you say, which of these 2 candidates do you think would be best suited to represent you? It's like 85-15. Right, 85% of the people want the outsider.
Yeah,
and so obviously that market movement, the market was craving that, and so in the same way that, like, a record label just produces music that people want to listen to, like, if you don't produce music people want to listen to, then they just won't listen to it, right? Eventually, the market will rise up and say, like, we've had enough of this, right? And so that is, I mean, obviously that's the rise of Trump. Again, if you want to look more left-leaning in places like New York, that's the rise of Mondani, where they're just not, I don't care who this guy's dad was. I don't care how, much experience he has. I don't care that this guy has no experience.
Yeah.
Like, eventually the market just started craving the anti-establishment, the outsider.
Yeah. I agree, but I kind of disagree too, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like with politics, and listen, I don't blame the people that are invested and have been doing it for a long time, like you, right? Like, you've been doing it a long time. I've been doing it a long time. We've established relationships. We know who we can trust. We know who we can't trust. But it just feels like, especially in Lee County, there's a stranglehold on the elections around here. And so people, I don't know, I feel like people want to vote for the outsider, but I don't think they really know who the outsider is. They just see like the big glossy flyers that get sent to their house 3 times, 4 times a week in the weeks before the election. And they think, oh, well, here's like a guy who's a fiscal conservative and he has a pretty little wife and a dog and some kids. And, he's, small business. I always tease and I'm always like, less tax. What is it? Small government, less taxes. It's so generic, Everybody is small government, less taxes. But what have you actually done? And I just don't know that. That's why I wanted to run for chairs, because I wanted to try and educate the public on the outsiders, right? Like, let's give them a voice. Not even give anyone any preference. Let's just give an equal playing field to the little guy and the big guy, because it feels like sometimes the big guy, to no fault of his own, he just has the bigger voice, the money, the connections. And so we don't always vote for the right person.
No, that's exceedingly true at the local level. So the way that local politics works in most places, right, is voters are exceedingly uneducated. Not because they're bad people, but because they have to.
They're busy and there's just not their thing.
Jobs,
they're not nerds like us.
They got to get their kids to soccer practice.
Yeah.
They've got to help with homework. Right. They don't have time to go through and understand who's running for mosquito control board, county commission, judge, supervisor elections, all this other stuff. And so what ends up happening is it is a name ID race, right? So when I was talking about before, I'm talking about if people have heard of both candidates, right, they're going to lean one way. What happens at these local levels is most people, and this is where candidates struggle, most people don't understand that it's about building name ID and then getting your message out. If you don't have high name ID, you cannot win.
Right.
People can't pick to vote for you if they have never heard of you.
Yeah.
And so what happens is routinely the biggest mistake I see with good-hearted conservative candidates is they say, I'm going to run for county commission. And then they start, going to the, Republican club of, insert my city here. Yeah. Right. And then they go to those meetings and they go every month, right? They go to the Women's Republican Club of Southwest Florida and they, they pay their $45 and eat their salad and drink their iced tea and listen to the speaker. Right. And they do that every single month for 12 months. And then they're like, I'm there. But they never go out and realize your typical Republican primary voter has never been to that.
Yes.
They don't go there.
What a great point.
Yeah,
what a great point. Just working the club circuit is not going to do it for you. You've got to be invested in the community.
Where regular people go.
Right.
And so that's the biggest thing is and so that's where I say on our side, right, the way to beat the establishment is you have to be strategic. Like, there's no nobility in losing, in running a losing campaign. And so I have all the respect in the world for, there's plenty. The vast majority of political consultants in this country are people I don't agree with. I don't agree with philosophically, but they've mastered the art of what they do, and they find good candidates. They find candidates that they can market really well, and they can, it's the same. Again, I always compare it to the record label business. It's like an industry plant. Right. Pretty blonde girl starts selling a bunch of records. Well, of course, so that's what the record label does because it's going to work.
It's like a template.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing here, right? They find some, boring guy in a suit. They call him a small,
small government, less taxes.
Yeah, conservative, and they throw him out there, and it works. That's why they do it. The difference is like the marketplace is really hungry for conservative outsiders, but they have to be successful and they have to run strategic campaigns. And so often, I'm sure what you see, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is people who are well-intended conservatives don't always run good campaigns.
Yes, I've definitely learned that.
Yeah,
people will be emotional about running and they'll feel like they can do it, but you really have to know what you're getting into. You really have to be strategic. It is a strategy, and it's a strategy because it's a business, right? And so if you don't know the business, if you've never been in the business, you can't just come out of nowhere. I think too, the thing that I really want to stress to people is, how many times has someone lost and then won later on, right? So just because that's the thing I think that frustrates people that are invested like me and those of us in the executive committee is like, we're invested, right? We're fully invested. And so you come and you butter us up and you come and you drink our tea and eat our salad and all that good stuff. And then you lose and you never come back. We never see you again. Yep. So how were you going to represent us when you were never really invested in us, right? It's the same with the folks that come out of nowhere and all of a sudden they want to, run for office. And it's like, have you ever been to a commissioner meeting? Have you been to a council? Can you name who your councilwoman or councilman is?
Yep.
And listen, I admire those people. You're right. A lot of them come to me. They almost always come to me and they want to meet with me and have coffee. And I always just lay it out for them and let them know, like, listen, you've got a lot of work to do. You've got a lot of, where have you been? What have you been up to? I get it that you're heavily involved in your church, but your church is not enough. And so you've got to be invested on so many different levels, but don't quit, because just because that race didn't win it for you doesn't mean that you can't win a race in the future. And the other thing is, don't always start at the top.
Totally.
Like, you're probably going to make more change running for council
undoubtedly
commissioner versus Congress. Like, everyone wants to run for Congress. It's like you're going to make almost no impact running for Congress. You're one of 434 up there, and so you want to do all these really great things. I think that's wonderful. Do you have a caucus?
Yep.
Do you have any connections in D.C.? Have you been to D.C.?
Yep.
Who do you know there?
Yep.
What can they do for you? Like, where can they align with you? Oh, you don't know anyone there? Oof. So yeah, it's a lot of strategy. So I want to wrap this up. Talk to us a little bit about now. So, so Matt Hurley now married with kids. I'm so excited. Have 5, 6, 7 more if you can.
Oh, yeah.
Start early. We started late, so I only had 2. I would have 4 more if I could. They're worth every second. But
absolutely.
Talk to us a little about, what you're up to now. I know you've been running huge campaigns, which is amazing. So talk to us about those.
Yeah, no, same thing as before. To piggyback off what you just said, I want to elect the most conservative people possible at every level of government, from dog catcher to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so, we have to use wisdom in how we do that, right? We got to, there's I think we're up to 230,000 elected seats in America. So there are plenty of seats for people to sit in. We just have to, find
the right people,
the best people, and we got to run them at the best time. Sometimes the climate isn't always aligned.
Yes.
You've got to have everything lined up at the perfect time to make people get in there. And then ultimately, we want to keep moving that dial to be, as traditional and conservative as possible. So that's always that's sort of the big mission all the time. So yeah, through our companies and through our, political organizations, always just getting involved in as many good races as we can. We try to be very targeted. Our objective, there's a lot of big consulting shops out there that run 10,000 races a cycle, literally that many a cycle.
Really?
We're very, very strategic. So we're looking to make impacts, to your point, like, we're not looking to just run races. We're looking to make sure we win the important races. And so we're very focused, and of course, in the 7 swing states. So we spend a lot of time in North Carolina.
And what are those 7? Yeah, what are those 7 swing states?
North Carolina, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, being the biggest. We look at Nevada. And
you think Wisconsin's a swing state?
Traditionally in presidential elections, it's not been doing well for us. So, like, if you look at 2024, we won all 7 swing states with in the presidency,
that's
but
right.
We only won one statewide election in those same 7 swing states. So that's a big thing that's coming down the line is, what does the Republican Party look like, post Donald Trump, and the future of America First, the future of MAGA, all that stuff. So that's always of interest. But and then outside of that, it's spending time with my wife and my beautiful son, and hopefully having as many children as the Lord allows. So that's the objective outside of that. But
and helping Mercedes survive the next year.
Oh, well, listen, Southwest Florida is always home. So we always want to see, again, it's so cool to see, so many of the people that we grew up with, doing so well.
Doing so many things. Byron, too.
Oh, yeah.
I always bring him up because, obviously that's old school for us.
Yeah, I know you. I know the party can't endorse, but I'm endorsing Byron Donalds for governor. I'm Team Byron all the way. I look forward to, it's going to be an amazing era for conservative politics here in Florida. So
it's definitely an interesting time. And again, just goes back to, if you're going to get involved, don't give up. You don't have to run for office to make an impact, and know that it's a long game, and do your homework, right? And anyway, so talk to me about what you're looking forward to now. What have you got going on in the future coming up, if you can tell us?
Yeah. No, I think 26 is going to be really important to turn out votes. So that's, 26 is, it's
when you have the House, the Senate and the White House, you're more than likely not going to keep it.
Yeah. And people are the American people are worried about affordability. They're very, very worried about affordability. And so, there's a lot of folks on our side that want to continue to fight culture wars and fight many of the things that we've
each other.
Yeah. And many of those are fights and wars that we've already won. Like we won a lot of these culture wars already. So it's really important to just, for the political folks involved, to stay laser focused. We have to win on the argument of affordability. Look, we have people like Zoran Mondani that want the American people to believe that the answer to affordability is socialism or worse, right? Maybe something like communism. We have to show people that it's true free market enterprise, it's capitalism. Those are the things that will make things affordable and make people be able to compete. And so I think that's going to be a really important message in 26. In 28, obviously, we'll see where both parties go in terms of their nominees. But the biggest thing that President Trump has done that we have to continue to do, beyond the Trump presidency, is turn out conservative voters.
Yes.
The president really did a phenomenal job of finding people in Appalachia, North Carolina, and finding people in the deserts of Arizona. Yeah, people
normies,
who had just been,
young people.
Yeah, largely disenfranchised people.
Yes.
Who, and he said, like, listen, I'm not going to go negotiate with the moderates that don't like me. That's fine. If they don't like me, then they can vote for Harris, I guess, right?
Right.
He said, I'm going to go out and find the people who've been forgotten, who've been disenfranchised, who've been left behind, and I'm going to go show those people that there's hope through, our conservative, leadership. And so I think we've got to continue to do that in the post-Trump era. And I think that, for the people that are involved in the party at a local level, always keep your eye on the war and don't worry so much about the battle. Understand who we're really fighting.
Yes.
What
a great way to put that.
Yeah. Just what the ultimate objective is. We want to get the most conservative person possible elected to every single seat. So a conservative governor of New York might look different than a conservative governor of Florida.
Correct.
But I'd rather have the most conservative Republican in New York in office than a far left Democratic socialist.
For sure. But
yeah.
Man, I wish we had more time because I'd love to get your feedback on the New York governor's race, where they were literally trying to push Cuomo. Republicans were pushing Cuomo. I'm like, he murdered people in nursing homes. Yeah. What do you mean we have to pick him over? What was the other gentleman?
Siwa.
Siwa. Yeah. Siwa.
Well, look, I think specifically with that race, I mean, it's a situation where you had again, I go back to like the marketplace, right? So obviously the vast majority of New Yorkers do not want socialism. Like that we see that in the polls, right?
Outside of New York City, right?
Yeah, Mondani's favorability is upside down 4-1. He's actually not that favorable.
Yeah.
But what happened is that the institutional Wall Street, the big capitalist donors who, again, they tend to be New York socialites. They're not necessarily the most conservative people. They're certainly, hell-bent on defeating socialism. Mm-hmm. They were also just hell-bent on retreading politicians, right? They stuck with Eric Adams for way too long, right? Once that was apparent that wasn't going to work, then they got on the Cuomo train and they just tried and tried and tried. In my opinion, the only thing they had to do was go find just a successful Wall Street individual that was also an outsider, right? That similar, but was a pro-capitalism outsider, and they could have won that race very, very easily. Certainly, Siwa, very nice guy, funny guy, very entertaining to listen to. Someone should give him a podcast. He's hilarious
he's a hoot.
To.
He's always been a hoot.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, you can't. People are not going to, are the same way that they're not going to vote for Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. They're not going to pick a bad candidate to stop an evil candidate, right? And so that's what happens is the voters, they weren't given really another option, besides Mondani, and so that's why he won. So,
interesting. Well, New York's gonna New York. I keep telling people, y'all like freak out about this guy. We forget about De Blasio. De Blasio was equally awful, but
it's been a tough road to hoe for those
Luckily,
guys.
we live in DeSantis country, and hopefully we're going to have an incredible governor in the future, and hopefully we can get a good congressman here in Florida 19, which is going to be a big race for us. And, I'm with you in terms of, as an executive committee chairwoman, my job is to turn out the vote.
Yep.
And so that's what we're going to be laser focused 2015. 2026 will not be 2025.
Yep.
We are going to be focused on getting out the vote, increasing voter registration. Of course, we have to fundraise and then educating on candidates and elections. And that is it.
Yep.
And I'm super excited for it. And I think, we've got a really great plan that we've been putting together that we're going to present to the membership soon. And I hope that we make you proud.
Oh, yeah. Well, getting that voter turnout in the primary is important, especially in Florida. You've got so many people do not realize that 99% of the policies that affect their life are, if you live here in Lee County, are done by people who get elected in primaries at the local level here.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Voter turnout is obviously typically dismally low in the primary.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so
as
critical.
Conservatives, we get comfortable. I've noticed that. Like, we
Always.
win and we get comfortable. I think it was Scott Pressler that pointed out that it wasn't but like a couple weeks after we lost Charlie and we were losing elections left and right. So, like, they're murdering us and we're not turning out. It's so bizarre. But hopefully, if people understand the importance of a midterm election, particularly when you sweep all three sections of the federal government, it's really important that you get out and you give them that House majority and that you keep that Senate majority where necessary. And then again, like we just pointed out, just knowing who your state rep is and voting for that city councilman and understanding who your commissioners are and what they're doing. All of that are things that, we're going to continue to work on. Nonetheless, I appreciate you so much.
Oh, so much fun.
We're going to go have steak and wine now.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. But nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Chairs Chat. Thank you to Matt for supporting us and supporting me as the chair and just being an awesome friend and a political ally. And thank you all for listening. We'll have a new episode for you soon. My name is Mercedes Price Harry, and I am the chairwoman for Lee County. And thank you very much for tuning in. Seacrest out.
Love it.